Dramatic pictures coming out of New York as the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, Cilia Flores, are taken from prison to a New York courthouse. First, it was a convoy coming out of the New York Detention Center and then into a football field where he was picked up in a hospital. Now, Alan Fisher joins us on the line from Washington. Alan, these are extraordinary pictures. Just 72 hours ago, we didn't think we would see anything like this, but now it's getting real. He's going to court. What happens today?
Well, remember, there's an element here of showmanship that the United States has captured Nicolas Maduro. It's not as if they want to keep it quiet. They want to show what could happen to others who effectively cross the U.S. government, but effectively cross Donald Trump as well. So that is all part of the show here, as you know. Now, Maduro will appear in front of a judge. We're expecting that to happen around midday. The fact that he's moving now isn't a surprise. They'll avoid a huge deal of the traffic. They'll get him into the center of Washington, it's center of New York, as quickly as they possibly can. And then there'll be a hearing. The charges will be read out to Nicolas Maduro, who'll be asked if he wants to make any sort of declaration on his guilt and innocence. And then there is every possibility after that he may well ask his legal team, who have been very quickly briefed about the circumstances, whether or not he will make any motions either now or at some point in the future about whether or not he should actually be in court. Of course, many people expect the defence to put forward the argument that he was unlawfully seized, it's against international law, and therefore he shouldn't be facing charges in a court in New York. That's likely to be thrown out. There is case history all along those lines, so it's likely that this will be a very brief appearance for Nicolas Maduro and his wife. I'm sure it is being watched in the White House, that I can see from where I'm standing right at the moment, by Donald Trump. He'll be following every single event. But the court hearing itself shouldn't take very long. The symbolism, though, will last in many people's minds for some considerable time.
I mean, these are iconic pictures that we're seeing right now. A helicopter flying into the center of Manhattan, taking Nicolas Maduro and his wife to court. Alan, there is a political problem here, though, as well. A court case could backfire against Donald Trump. There's no guarantee that, it's going to go his way. But there's also a short-term political problem as well, because there are people that are challenging this, right?
Yeah, I think the short-term political problem isn't something that Donald Trump is particularly worried about. He believes that what he did was right. He believes that what he did was popular, particularly with his base, and that is certainly borne out by polls and social media that we're seeing. Many people believe that this was absolutely the right thing to do, of capturing Maduro and putting him on trial. He promised something similar during the election campaign. So as far as the Trump team are concerned, this is a promise made and a promise kept. Long term, whether or not this case falls apart, there's every possibility, but the time this goes to trial, Donald Trump will no longer be in office. Remember, he's only got 3 more years.
I'm just going to pause you there for a second, because the helicopter has landed, so we're expecting to see Maduro come out, and it's a very interesting point you're making there. Donald Trump might not be in office, so there is it is all about the showmanship, as you said earlier, and the short-termness of this. It's about these pictures that we're seeing right now, right?
Yeah, but name any politician that isn't involved in short-termism. They don't tend to plant trees and then enjoy the fact that they bloom at some point later. Politicians are about the here and now, the next hit on the opinion polls. And Donald Trump is no different from that. He perhaps likes more of a show. But this is kind of the thing that you would expect for such a high-profile case and such a high-profile defendant. Although it's Nicolas Maduro, we've seen many other cases where this sort of security is absolutely normal. And as I say, it's probably all being watched from the White House by Donald Trump. I mean, you've got to look at some of the staging.
Nicolas Maduro is
You've got to
now
look at some of the
actually
staging
out.
over the last couple of days.
He's actually
you've got to
out
look at some of the staging over the last couple of days where Maduro was led down by DEA officers along a carpet that had DEA on it. Now, that was done so that the DEA can put that onto their website at some point. This is all about the image and all about selling the story.
And that's the exact same image that we're seeing right now. He's being led by DEA agents, and I think, yes, DEA agents. He's in handcuffs. He's walking along that quay where the helicopter landed. He's surrounded by these agents. This is a very powerful image. His wife is walking behind him, Cilia Flores. This is extraordinary to watch. And as you say, this is all about the image. Now, when he actually gets to court, like you say, it's going to be quick. It's pretty much the question, do you plead guilty or not guilty? But do we know, Alan, if he does have a legal team in place already? What's the situation there? Do we know any details?
Well, of course, when he was arrested, when he was taken into custody in his own compound in Caracas, Marco Rubio tells us that his rights were read to him. Among those rights, the Miranda rights, as they're known in the United States, you're told that if you cannot afford counsel, then counsel will be appointed for you. We don't know what the position is with Maduro, whether he's been given a court-appointed attorney, whether that will happen now, or whether he already has a legal team, perhaps even is the government of Venezuela. Remember, the vice president who took over the top role said that she regarded Maduro still as the legitimate president of Venezuela. Will Venezuela fund his legal defense? Some of those questions will become clearer over the next couple of hours or so. So that will all just play out in the courtroom during the hearing itself. There's one other thing I want to point out about the imagery that we're seeing. The fact that he's accompanied by DEA agents, that's the Drug Enforcement Agency here in the United States. It is a law enforcement agency. That's important because, of course, Marco Rubio has been on the defensive with people saying any sort of action in Venezuela on the ground was an act of war. And he said, no, this was not an act of war. We didn't have to get congressional approval. This was a law enforcement operation. And the fact that law enforcement, you would never see soldiers taking someone like Maduro into court anyway, but the fact that the DEA are so front and center here is to re-emphasize the point that the Trump administration is keen to make, that this was a law enforcement operation, that the reason that they are there and they moved in was because he was a fugitive from justice. This was not an act of war against Venezuela.
Now, Nicolas Maduro and Cilia Flores, his wife, have been put into an armoured car. They are now travelling up out of the quay to the courthouse where presumably he'll meet with his legal team and lodge whether he's going to appeal guilty or not guilty. We've got Kristen Saloomey on the line at the moment as well. Kristen, in the last couple of days, you've been spending time with Venezuelans. They're split in kind of their opinion of this, but whether you like Nicolas Maduro or not, or whether you're looking at these pictures, everybody's going to be looking at these pictures glued to their TV sets, right? This is extraordinary. What have people been telling you, Kristen?
Well, like much of the United States, when it comes to anything political, the people I've seen have been very divided, but have very strong feelings. I was outside of the detention center where he is being held yesterday, and there were Venezuelan immigrants who were walking by who said they had to come by just to see that he was there and to express themselves. They were thrilled that he was behind bars. I don't think you're going to find many Venezuelans who like Maduro here in the United States and want him in power. That said, there are concerns about how he was removed and what comes next, of course. And the protests we've seen, and there have been protests, and we expect more outside of the courthouse today, the protests have been Americans who are upset about not going to Congress, not asking for war, waging this military action. Again, of course, we just heard Alan saying that the president and the Secretary of State have not called it an act of war. This is a criminal matter as far as they're concerned. But Americans see this as a violation some of them see this as a concern, as him acting without Congress and violating international law, and we saw signs to that effect there. So,
Kristen,
more of that when he arrived at the courthouse.
I want to ask you a question, because the detention center that he was taken from is controversial in many ways, right? What's the controversy about that place?
Yeah, it has issues with its management. I mean, frankly, all prisons in New York, many of them in New York, they're understaffed. They have issues with violence and lack of control. I understand that this facility, because of lack of staffing, sometimes people are put on lockdown and they have to stay in their cells. Apparently, Mr. Maduro and his wife will be kept separate from the general population because of their high profile, but that doesn't mean they won't be subjected to these difficult conditions, the bad food, the fighting, the lockdowns, and so on. So it is somewhat controversial in that sense, certainly a far cry from the style of life he's used to living in Caracas.
Kristen, just stay there. I want to bring in Alan Fisher here. Alan, let's just talk about the charges that he faces. It's narco-trafficking, it's cocaine smuggling, it is weapons smuggling as well. So you've got to build a case around all of these. But we've been talking to guests in the last 24, 48 hours who've said to us the government's key witness here has been already discredited by a certain amount of legal expertise within the US itself. So by no means is this a cut and dried case, right?
Well, very few are, of course. I mean, everyone thinks they've got a solid case until they put it in front of a jury, and that's what they're going to have to do at this point. The most startling thing, though, in the indictment is the fact that fentanyl isn't mentioned anywhere. I mean, Donald Trump has, for so long, said they're sending fentanyl into the United States. People who objected to the attacks on the boats said that's simply not the case. There's no evidence of this. And in many of the attacks on the boats, in fact, in almost all of them, the White House hasn't provided any evidence of people that they have killed, of these fishing boats that they've attacked. But Donald Trump and the White House continued to say they were transporting white powder. They were also sending fentanyl into the United States, yet in nowhere in the four-point indictment is there any mention of fentanyl at all. There is cocaine. Now, there's all sorts of questions about how much involvement the CIA have had in Latin America in the cocaine trade, and whether or not they were moving around money to provide help to armed groups that they wanted to support. Some of that may well come out in court. And there was also...
Sorry, Alan, I'm just going to disturb you. I'm just going to disturb you there and bring back in Kristen Saloomey. Kristen, they've arrived, the convoys arrived in number 1 Police Plaza. Now, I do know New York a fair bit, but I don't know where this is. Geographically, would you be able to kind of locate where we are right now in New York?
Yes, absolutely. This is the part of town where police headquarters are. New York City, of course, has the largest police department in the country, if not perhaps the world, 35,000 employees. It's the size of a small army. Police headquarters are there. Local courts and federal courts are there as well. And we've certainly seen a lot of high-profile guests come to the courthouse where Nicolas Maduro and his wife are going to. We've seen the rapper Sean Diddy Combs. We've seen Senator Bob Menendez, a New Jersey senator who was convicted recently, was tried in this court. Sam Bankman-Fried, just the list goes on. So and narco-terrorism and drug traffickers as well have been tried there, including the former president of Honduras, who ironically was pardoned less than a year after he was sentenced by Donald Trump. So this is a very secure facility, a very guarded facility, and it'll take a while before we see him before a judge. He's getting there early so he can be processed, so he presumably will meet his legal team. We have not heard if he's been assigned a lawyer or if he's been able to hire a lawyer at this point. It's kind of hard to imagine. He's been on the phone from his prison cell talking to his legal team. This will probably be the first chance he gets to talk to a lawyer. But all of that to say, eventually he'll have to appear before the judge and answer to these charges. What we expect to happen today is an arraignment. That's when the defendant is formally accused of the charge and presented with the charge, and they have to register how they plead, either guilty or not guilty. Of course, it's standard to say not guilty and go from there. From there, this is a process that's going to take months, if not years, to work its way through the courts.
But do you think this level of security is going to happen every single time he goes to court? Just to remind our viewers, he has gone in an armoured car to a helicopter from the detention centre, to a helicopter, to another armoured car, into the centre of Manhattan, surrounded by security, surrounded by DEA agents. This is a big production. Is that the kind of thing that you've seen in the past, Kristen? Is this just standard?
Geez, I don't recall an inmate being even when Donald Trump comes to town, they close off the streets and shut them down so he can pass through, but he passes through in a car usually. Not that he doesn't use a helicopter, but normally we see him, when he went to court, he drove to court. He didn't chopper to court. So it is highly unusual as far as I know. I don't pretend to know every case of New York, but I can't recall seeing a defendant in a helicopter.
I mean, these are certainly very, very powerful images. Let me just recap what's happened in the last half hour or so. About 30 minutes ago, something like that, we saw Nicolas Maduro leave the New York Detention Center. He was surrounded by DEA agents, all in heavy military gear, flak jackets, with rifles out. He was put into a heavily armored car, the kind of thing that you might see in Baghdad, the kind of thing that you might see when the American military go abroad. There was a convoy. That convoy spent about 10 minutes getting to the helicopter landing pad. His wife, Cilia Flores, and himself were taken then out of that convoy and put into a helicopter that looked like it was taking off from a football field. That helicopter, a very short journey across the River Hudson into Manhattan, where it landed at a quayside. Once again, he was transferred. Nicolas Maduro being walked first, his wife being walked first, surrounded again by these heavily armed DEA agents. These are pictures that are going to go back in history. And then he's just arrived at number 1 Police Plaza. Kristen, as you were just saying, that is a secure facility. It's not only just a police plaza, but that's where the trial is going to take place. I'm wondering here, I don't know, but Kristen, have you ever covered a trial inside that building? Can you walk us through what it actually looks like?
Are you still there? Can you hear me?
Kristen, can you hear me? Kristen, have you got me? I think
Hello?
Kristen,
Try again. Sorry.
Kristen, Kristen,
great. I think
I
hear you now.
Yeah, Kristen, great. I was just saying that they've arrived at number 1 Police Plaza in Manhattan. I don't know if you've done this before, but have you covered a trial inside that building? Can you tell us anything about what it's like to be inside that building?
Yes, absolutely. The federal courts don't allow cameras in the courtroom. So whenever there's a high-profile case, you have to wait in line to get inside. Courtrooms are open to the public, first come, first served. In a case like this, that may be, there'll be so many lawyers and so much media in there. It'll be interesting to see if any actual public were able to get inside. But the floors are very secure. The defendant is let in through a secure entrance. He'll probably be processed at Police Plaza and then taken underground into the courthouse. So we aren't likely to see him on the street near the courthouse in Midtown, technically Lower Manhattan. Once we get inside, as I said, this is an arraignment, and the arraignments are pretty straightforward usually. It's establishing the legal teams for each side, stating the charges, what they are, laying out a schedule for the upcoming trial. The pleas are entered on behalf of the defendants, either guilty or not guilty. We do have the indictment, though, which is giving us a little bit more information about this case. It's a 25-page indictment they won't get into that very much today. I can promise you that. In the
But
courthouse.
that indictment
but we
is
do
actually,
see little clues.
Kristen, that indictment is actually extraordinary because for the longest time, Donald Trump has been accusing Nicolas Maduro of shipping fentanyl, which is an addictive substance, into the US. 25 pages, not one single mention of that particular drug. So, you know, what is actually, do we know what's actually the details of what's in the indictment?
So he's facing 4 charges: narco-terrorism, conspiracy to distribute cocaine, and then weapons charges as well. And what they say is that he and his family members were corrupt, basically, that they were allowing drug dealers to come and go. And some of the specific things that they mention is providing travel visas and diplomatic cover to drug traffickers. They even claim that they let them use a government airport hangar for their planes. But it's not very specific. There's not a lot of details. So, and as you say, there's no mention of fentanyl. The specific charges refer to cocaine, which they say Venezuela was helping to get into Mexico and into the United States. They name in the indictment
Kristen,
a
very
whole
quickly,
host of criminal gangs and groups as well.
Kristen, very quickly, you just said that there weren't much details in the indictment. I'm not an expert on, you know, the U.S. judicial system. Is that unusual, or is that just par for the course?
Well, they don't lay out every single piece of evidence in the indictment. It's just enough to lay out their case. So, you know, it seems very general and not very specific.
Right.
But at the same time, yeah, you don't get detailed evidence in an indictment. It's more of a general statement. So really, it'll be up to the lawyers to make the case in court.
Don't miss out. Get a full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.